Hello and welcome to the Juan podcast. If you're enjoying the show, consider signing up for the Patreon. There you get ad-free content, early access, exclusive episodes, and monthly supporter hangouts. You can find it at patreon.com/the Juan podcast. If you don't like the subscription-based models, there are other ways of supporting the show that are linked in the description. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy this episode.
Welcome to the Juan on Juan podcast with your host, Juan Ayala.
Welcome back to another episode of the Juan podcast. We're doing something a little bit different today. We're doing a little bit of a follow-up for those that haven't listened yet to the Occult Book Club episode number 10, A Voyage to the World of Cartesius. Go ahead and check that out now because that's going to be loosely based on... This episode is going to be loosely based on that. And here we are. Make sure to follow me on social media at the Juan podcast on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, wherever. Leave a 5-star review on any podcast platform you're listening to. Also, check out all the stuff we have on the website, the Occultist Mundi. Got issue 1, 2. I'm working on issue number 3. And also check out the comic book, The Chosen Juan versus the Saturnian Cube. There you go. Everybody's got it. And I know Thomas has a whole bunch of stuff he wants to play with. Make sure to follow us on there. Make sure to leave a 5-star review. Really helps the show. If you're listening to this on the YouTube side, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, share with everybody that you know, etc., etc. Make sure to join the Telegram. Got a lot of people on there. It's growing day by day. And it's just a whole bunch of weirdos. Sorry to say that, but a whole bunch of weird people. I mean...
Get yourself on the list.
Get yourself on the list, yeah. So here we are. What's up, guys? Thomas, you want to plug your stuff? And Gabe?
Yeah, I mean, as always, man, paranoidamerican.com. My big one is the Paranoid American pamphlet on MK Ultra. And you already mentioned the one-on-one podcast official comic, The Chosen Juan. So yeah, check out paranoidamerican.com. We got a whole bunch of new stuff coming this year, but you'll hear about it. If you keep coming back and watching the channel, you're going to see all kinds of cool exclusive reviews that won't even be out till next year. So
nice. And Gabe?
Yeah, Slick Dissident, my YouTube channel name. I also get down over on the Weaving Spiders Webs. You catch me on Interverse with Chance Garton over on the Rockfin. And I get down with Rising from the Ashes every now and again, too. So big shout out to everybody.
Yeah,
but yeah. It's a shared learning experience over on my channel. Me and my fucking dry erase boards.
I was just mentioning to Juan when we started setting this up, I was putting together some art feedback for the Rising from the Ashes comic. So that's coming out soon now.
Nice shirt, bro. Nice. You're gonna get us pulled from YouTube for wearing that.
This is the OG shirt, man.
Did you buy
I was thinking
supplements
about
with that too?
But you know what? It's almost like when a band goes through like a horrible phase. But you still see people rocking like the original Metallica shirt before they shit all over Napster. You know what I mean? So this is kind of an example of that one. Like I'm rocking like 1990s InfoWars, maybe not 2022 InfoWars.
Yeah. I told somebody recently that I only listened to like the half of the first hour. It's usually all ads about buying the supplements, and
I only like their first albums, bro. I only like Alex Jones's first albums.
Well, here we are. So I showed Gabe the episode before it came out, right? For those that are on the patreon.com/the1on podcast. I gave Gabe, since he is a contributor to the channel and a friend of the channel, I gave him a little bit of early access to that episode just to get some feedback. I like to get feedback on things before I put them out. And Gabe was blown away. And I knew, and kudos to Paranoid American for actually finding this gem. And I've gone out to say that, what if we stumbled across some magical journal of some sorts and not only that, but what the symbolism behind that particular book entitles, because there's layers upon layers of meanings behind multiple things. So not the superficial is one thing, like the literal. And then
I don't even think
that,
the author's a real person, man. The
I
more
don't
and more I
either.
look into, I mean, I joked at first that anyone that has two first names as their whole name isn't real, but I really, the only way that this guy even has a record of existing is an entry in the Encyclopedia Britannica from the mid 1800s, and before that, it's almost like he didn't even exist.
Well,
It's weird, man. It's really weird.
Gabe came up with an idea. I'm not going to say what he came up with. He blew my mind yesterday on the phone. He came up with an idea of people orchestrating things behind the scenes in order to prop up other things. Now, that's like the show, what is it, Pretty Little Liars or Gossip Girls, whatever it is, where at the end of the show, spoiler alert, it was one of the actual people within the group that was orchestrating everything. Now, this guy, this Gabriel Daniel guy, apparently
Of course it's a Gabriel.
Of course he's a Gabriel, right? He also contributed to the Descartes lexicon, I believe it's what it's called. So he was a Descartes esotericist. Now, what if maybe he was Descartes' homunculi? Who knows, right? Like who knows what that entitles? But I say maybe on air here while you guys are talking, I'll start to dig up to see what else I can bring, because he also did write some other stuff.
So he did admit in that book that when he tried to come back the first time, the homunculus would not give his body back. And the only reason he gave his back is because Descartes and the old man and father, the father that he was with, all told the homunculus, hey, this, like, we vouched for you, so you have to get out. But there's nothing saying that he didn't leave his body some other time and come back, and he wasn't with the squad, right? And at that point, the homunculus is like, no, I'm gonna go ahead and watch over this car for you, right? It's like the valet doesn't give your keys back. What are you going to do?
But that would entitle that it's the same homunculus for everybody.
Or just any homunculus, right? Maybe he cheaped out. Maybe he didn't hire the right homunculus for the job.
So, Gabe, take it away.
It's also a good lesson in willfulness. Having a powerful will to reinstate your claim on your territory. A lot of people have been bred into being total pushovers. But furthermore, he needed his guides. And this is why there's always a guru or a spirit guide on the other side. DMT trips have that kind of consistency of a helper who's going to lead you on the other side of the veil.
It's that wise old man Jungian archetype, right?
Yes. Same thing with Kung Fu. When I was young, I went out looking for a master, and I found quite a few of them, and every master was better than the last one. And I was finding masters to supersede the one that I had loyalty to, until eventually I was so old, I'm like, fuck, I'm the master now. The kids are looking to me for lessons.
I always wanted the grandpa from Three Ninjas.
Nice.
So I found an interesting connection. I don't know if it has anything to do with it, possibly not, but from what I can see, they were contemporaries. Now, kind of sort of contemporaries. Yeah, they not contemporaries like same age, but we have here, check this out.
Gabriel Daniel, you mean?
Yeah, check this out, bro. I don't know. We have Daniel Gabriel Fahrenheit, who was around the same time, 1686, and our boy Gabriel Daniel over here was around 1649.
Where I was talking France versus Germany and Poland. I don't leave that part out.
Well, but again, I mean, remember, we have to keep in mind that, and this is just going based off the superficial, we keep ideas, right? The idea that some of these guys would use pen names. I mean, that was, I forget what the name of it is. A pistol. Yeah, I'll find it, the actual name, where you use a a pen name pretty much to write some sort of magical thing. So you have a lot of pseudo-Platonic, pseudo-Aristotelian texts around this time. And this guy was in bed with Gottfried Leibniz, which was a Descartes fanatic. He was the one that went out and looked for Descartes' secret notebook, the secret journal. So,
right. And you take the first two halves of that name, you get Gottlieb. Gottfried Leibniz. You get Gottlieb.
Yeah. And this guy, dude, this guy
Makes
was
me
also
think of Sidney Gottlieb
Bingo.
of MK Ultra fame. Yeah.
Yep. And that's a goat liberated. It's a scapegoat.
He also raised sheep and goats on his farm. He
Who
became
did?
a lot of people don't realize this. So Sidney Gottlieb, the guy that was known as the dirty trickster of the CIA, he was the one that was behind a lot of the poison / covert dosing people with drugs. So Sidney Gottlieb, a couple of things. He had clubfoot, which is just an interesting thread on its own because there's a lot of intelligence agents that happen to have had club feet, whatever that means. Cleft feet, maybe, cloven hooves. But he also, despite having gone through all of the high, ranks of academia and had all sorts of money and prestige, he becomes like a homesteader. He just moves out into like a literal log cabin without any plumbing or electricity, and he just kind of lives out there and studies occult topics and poisonous topics. And it's nuts because this guy ends up being like MK. When people say MK Ultra, you're essentially talking about Sidney Gottlieb's pet project.
Right. And the one-footedness and the scapegoat aspect is an Ophiuchus nod as well. Ophiuchus has the 1 foot on the 5 degrees of the ecliptic plane, and he's escaping. He's jumping off the plane or off the elliptic plane, and he's also
Gordon Wasson also usually refers to one-footed men or clubbed foot as references to the mushroom or mushroom cults.
Nice. I love that.
Which
That's
that in
solid.
itself, it's sort of an inside reference to secret societies as a whole.
Right. Yep. And even medicine men. That's what Ophiuchus is. He's the serpent charmer. So he's a master of poisons and remedies. And as we've established, the poison is the dose.
Very Paracelsian of you.
Yeah, I'm reading up on this Gabriel Daniel guy, and perhaps the most famous, oft reprinted Voyage du Monde de Descartes. Is that the voyage
that's the one, yeah. The Voyage to the World of Descartes, essentially.
A refutation of the vortex theory that that philosopher. And then he also wrote some. I'm trying to pull up the other stuff that he wrote about Descartes and maybe perhaps pull that up. But from what I can see, we mentioned this on the first episode. Historiographer.
Oh, you know what? Okay, so I'm working on Gabriel Daniel's really, like you said, 2 first names. It's like calling out, but it's double prophets. It's a heavenly prophet, angelic, and it's an earthly mundane prophet was Daniel. And so that is really indicating that it's a fabrication, but it's also a G-D. This is a certain order likes to refer to their divine maker with the G-D, but it also is a 74, which is wolfram, which is tungsten, which is the primary element that the moon is allegedly made out of. So it's a very significant G-74, and G-D is like just packed with meaning.
So what's your read on this guy? Is it a pseudonym for another person? Is it representative of a group? Was it a real person and then they just kind of like commandeered his likeness, or was it always fictional?
Well, I think it's definitely a pen name. I love this quote. I don't know who this is attributed to. I'm gonna give it to Chance because he gave it to me. Was if you want to change the world, you have to be willing to give somebody else the credit. And so most prolific writers in this realm are in fact institutions. I think that they are think tanks, but they put the name on a single persona. I think most of Stephen King's work comes out of think tanks. I think that old what's her name that made Harry Potter. I think she's also
J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, and especially when they like come out of the dumpsters and into millionaire infamy in the matter of 4 years, and you're looking at a construct for sure.
There's a quote from, I want to say it's Neil Gaiman, about him and J.K. Rowling, and basically just saying that, I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have the verbatim quote in front of me, but that they were basically just plagiarizing Sword in the Stone. And if you look into the origins of the Sword in the Stone story, which I think the fourth one was unpublished, it was all about Merlin, but it's got so many crazy occult connotations with everything in that story from beginning to end. And you start looking into the backstory of the guy that wrote it, and it's a deep rabbit hole to go down, man.
Okay, so, and you mentioned that it was in the Sword in the Stone or the Merlin cartoon where the bottles
were whole premise of Sword in the Stone is essentially this, like, the old world, the old arcane knowledge, trying to entice the youth to follow the old ways and learn magic and learn like these occult principles, versus this newer sort of like, they would call themselves modern, but in the movie and in the book, it's just like these barbarians. They just go out and fight, and he wants to be a squire. So it's depending on if you want to become this like academic wizard person, or if you just want to be like a manual labor, might makes right sort of, strength kind of person. And that was the whole combination of those two worlds, is the exact same premise of the sword being the feminine and the stone being the feminine, the passive, and the sword being that active masculine aspect. So him being able to sort of master both of those worlds, and the masculine and feminine, that is the whole premise of Percy Jackson, I think, was the first one. And then you've got the J.K. Rowling, which again, Harry Potter is that same exact person that kind of like blends the two together and is like a master of all the different realms. So again, it's just, those are just retellings of the Sword and the Stone over and over.
So are any of these things standing out to you, Gabe? I have the Gematrinator here open. We have 99.
Yeah, 63 is hitting a chord for me big time.
Well, there's lots of 369s in here too.
Yep.
Chaldean 36.
Yeah, there it is. Look at that. Okay, so there's 2 63s, and then in Chaldean you get the 36, switching it up. Oh, there's another.
There's 4 63s.
Look at all this. Okay.
And 136, right. But I have no idea what this means, so you're gonna have to break it down for me.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is actually on my radar currently in the research I'm doing, which is really, I mean, such a long journey. I don't want to ramble or bore anybody, but a long story short is I discovered you guys have seen me do the Thoth Tarot deck as it relates to Star Wars, which I perceive now as the psychic scaffolding of the collective consciousness. And it follows this very fascinating pattern. It does not roll out. Well, it does roll out like a zodiac because it's sequential. The cards are in the general order of the zodiac, but there are personalities with dynamic relationships to one another. And that tells me that that has brought me to overlay the tarot cards as archetype personas onto the Enneagram personality matrix. And ever since I've done that, I've been greatly rewarded and brought deeper and deeper into the mysteries of this Thoth deck. And I don't think this deck operates like all the other standard tarot decks. It has profound inversions baked into the essence of its making. First of all, that Lady Frida Harris, she paid Crowley so she could do the deck. That's an inversion. That's not how it's done. All the other tarot decks, the author commissions an artist and pays them to do the work. So there was an inversion there in the very foundation of the deck.
I wonder how much Crowley did that. He would just like go to like a restaurant or a hotel, like, nah, bro, we're going to do like an inversion magic. You're going to pay me to stay in your hotel. You're going to pay me to eat this meal. Don't worry. It's all magic.
He had to have game in order to have all the people who had sex with him, in order for him to convince them to have sex with him.
Follow me up this mountain. Oh, you've never been on a mountain before? Don't worry about it. Just follow me. I've done it a million times.
This dude had to have some serious game, either a serious manipulator or something, but this guy was onto something. But yeah, so we have the inversion of the Crowley being paid to do his deck, which Yeah, very,
Right.
very weird. But it's
Oh,
funny, well, because I'm looking here, and I like to look at this because I think it's fun sometimes, right? We have the gematrix, and I looked up here when it gets to the English. Let's see here, results. So where the hell was it? Okay, so we got kind of. Let me look for it again. Oh, here we go.
There's an
English.
American flag number on there. How does the
So
American flag number work?
result by English and simple gematria, we have 13 Jupiter Ascension Nero Kaiser, which is Nero Kaisermar, the infamous Nero. Rapture, we have Firmament, we have Eradication, then we have Michelle Obama.
no way.
Yeah, we have Michelle Obama on here.
So just to be clear, we're saying that Michelle Obama might have actually written the Cartesian Voyage.
Listen,
Hey, she was on a boat. She was on a boat when Notre Dame was burning down,
and
sipping that champagne.
And we know that the homunculus were black, so that's all I'm gonna say.
Dang.
But
Dang. Wow, that's really something. So something that's come across my radar, and this is like what is really remarkable is the production you guys put together kind of hit all of us on a different chord because we're all looking at the realm through different lenses, and I did not expect it to hit so hard in this project that I'm doing that I would think would be so unrelated.
You know what it is? I have a theory on this, and it's just
Yeah.
because so many other works from this time period, right? Mid 1600s, late 16 sort of hundreds, that most of those texts are so incredibly inaccessible and just very hard to read. And of course, we didn't read the original French version that came out in the 1600s. We read like an English translation of that, which was it was only like 100 years
Thomas
after that.
Taylor, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was.
Yes, we've got a Gabriel, and we've got a sorry, there was no wands in the story, but
Thomas Taylor, which was a very, very interesting character. He's translated a lot of works as he considers himself a Neoplatonist. So we got to keep that in mind as well, because these are not they're shady. They're shady characters. I'm just gonna say.
I think the lineage here is what makes it unique, is because usually a work that was popular enough in the late 1600s to make its way all the way to modern day, or at least the early 1900s, it's been retold and reinterpreted so many times that it starts to either lose its essence or it just kind of gets like muddled up with a whole bunch of reinterpretations, which ironically this book talks about, where it's like you can't just start adapting a framework and then just kind of pick and choose little aspects of it to cater to your own personal beliefs. It was very much saying like, no, there's a very specific formula, and this is what that formula is. But I think that's what makes this book unique, is that it's almost like unbridled, right? It's like that uncut, raw sort of Descartes philosophy and occultism without being dressed up in anything.
Yeah, I would say that when they say Cartesian split, they are speaking of a breakaway society, and that this philosophy that is birthed out of this time period and the influences that informed Descartes' work here might be hailing back to a complete alteration of parallel physics, a system of parallel physics. I've been sitting on this idea that Spinoza developed a system of physics that sounds like and uses the same words as the one that is handed to the masses. But in fact, there are strategic inversions. For example, in his time, he would use the term objective for subjective and subjective for objective. And right there is a split where you have to double think in order to stay the course. And we know that Einstein was asked if he believed in a God, and Einstein's answer was, I believe in Spinoza's God. And so I hold a space for the possibility that the breakaway civilization is hailing back to this the secret of Descartes.
And I want to point out, I'm wrong on the actual Taylor. The Taylor Thomas. It was another Taylor Thomas from the 17th century. And it's this guy. So it wasn't the Taylor Thomas that I was first alluding to, which the Thomas Taylor. Taylor Thomas that I was talking about is
Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
Oh,
The
look at
Lion
that.
King, bro. There we go. There's the agricultural worship.
This is the guy I was talking about. He the first to translate English to complete works of Aristotle and Plato. So as well as Orphic fragments. I mean,
Wow.
this guy.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm gonna point out his name is super highly ultra Masonic.
100%.
So you got the tailor is a keeper of the checkerboard tiled floors, and he's it's also a tailor will generally have a measuring rope around his neck when he's doing his craft. He has a rope around his neck. That's a Masonic old noose pulling him along.
Check this.
And then Thomas
Plus,
means
any hand tools you can essentially equate to being Masonic. Anything that is the thing that you actually have to look at with your eyes and measure with your hands.
Yeah, man, good call. Yep. And then Thomas is the twin, so he's got Doppelganger Mason is basically his name.
Check this out. His translations were influential on William Blake, Percy Shelley, Percy's.
Oh.
Look at that. William. I don't know who this guy is, but
Wordsworth, bro.
Wordsworth. I don't know who that is.
That's where you ever heard of calling someone a Wordsworth?
No.
It's like a master of language.
So this guy, we know who this is, right? And his connections. And then Ralph Waldo Emerson and G.R.S. Mead, secretary to Helena Blavatsky of the Theosophical Society. So this guy, and the reason I know about him is because I've read Iamblichus, which is who wrote about Pythagoras. So I've read the complete life of Pythagoras by Iamblichus, which was translated by, of course, your boy here. Yeah, this guy, and it's got kind of a small head, so
he's got like a Clooney thing going on a little bit.
Yeah, he's got a Clooney thing going on.
Yeah, he's kind of weird looking.
Call.
So yeah, completely different from this Thomas Taylor, which was a different Thomas Taylor of earlier. So I don't know.
That's a fancy hat.
That is a fancy hat.
So this morning over on Interverse Telegram, we were weaving on how much Helena Blavatsky from her side profile image looks like Elon Musk.
For the record, I don't see it, but yeah, I did see you guys talking about it.
And then somebody else brought old Greta Thunberg into the mix. And I see it just in that side profile. There's something about the facial structure.
The common denominator there could just be something related to like fetal alcohol syndrome, FAS.
Nice. I could see that. Yeah. Well, Greta's her third name. She's got a super long name. Greta Tintin. That's double X. That's the Aeon card, which we'll get into eventually. But Greta Tintin, Eleonora Ernman Thunberg. She got 4 names. So she's got Elon basically in her third name. Her mother's name was Milena, which is so much like Helena Blavatsky. It's a trip. It's a trip and a half. So there was a real crazy thread going in all throughout.
I feel kind of ripped off. Like I only have 3 names, and I know some people only have 2 names. Like I feel like there should be a limit. Like you're not allowed to just give somebody 8 or 9 names. You have to pick the ones that actually mean something.
Are you muted, Gabe?
Yeah, she's kind of I think she's a full-on fabrication construct. I mean, I'm not saying she's a doppelganger clone or anything, but like that name just fits the Aeon card too well. And
if someone said it, if she was a clone, though, would you be like, "Oh, I never would have guessed that"? There was no indication. You'd be like,
"Yeah, I would not be surprised." No, I would not be surprised. But she does. She fits the story of Hephaestus, who traps her own. Hephaestus traps his mother in the throne, and then he flips the roles on her, and he starts to interrogate her as to how his life came to be so shitty, which is exactly what old Greta is known for. How dare you? She's lecturing to adults, and then all of her followers, her minions, are sticking themselves to the constructs of civilization, such as thrones and art pieces, So yeah, there's something really profound about the Hephaestosian spirit that she embodies, which is the Aeon card.
Yeah, I'm trying to finding the other works of this guy to see what he was on, but I'm not having any luck because this guy is just so obscure. There's literally only A Voyage to the World of Cartesius, and then they say he wrote other stuff, and I'm looking, and I'm not finding. So look at this, Occult Book Club number 10.
We're gonna be like one of the more formal authorities on this guy, right?
Yeah, we're gonna be like esotericist on this particular.
So I got a couple of notes about the old man's friend, apparently, who was Father Marcinus.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get into this because this was like deep in the weeds. But since we got Gabe here to break it down, like Gabe is the weed whacker, right? And he's the esoteric weed whacker. So here, this is just a little excerpt that I grabbed from it. So he was saying, the whole reason that this guy got introduced to the old man and went on his journey is because he reads this letter that was about meditations, and the meditations, I think, is implied is this Father Marcinus's knowledge of Descartes going on these trips. He would call them meditations, right? When he blasts off into the universe for a couple hours, he was on like a meditation. I think that's what they were implying here, because that's also what Descartes, he would go and sleep for a long periods of time. He wasn't sleeping, he was taking DMT trips and learning about the universe, right? So it says that one of the actual works by Father was in Genism, and it says it was written as a commentary on the book of Genesis and comprises uneven sections headed by verses from the first 3 chapters of Genesis. On the first sight, the book appears to be a collection of treatises on various miscellaneous topics. However, a researcher has shown the principle of unity in the work as a polemic goal against magical and divinatory arts, Kabbalism, animistic, and pantheistic philosophies. So he actually would write about like not believing in magic, which is interesting because in the book they tell him multiple times, don't worry, we're not going to a witch's Sabbath. Like, this is all science. We're talking about the original elements, and here's the formulas, and here's how light works. But in the middle of their adventure, they see the Chinese Mandarin wizard fly by on the comet, and that one throws me for a loop because it's like, well, is it not a witch's Sabbath and there's not magic going on? But they imply that magic does exist, and they also mention that the DMT is almost like, I'm gonna oversimplify, but they mention it almost as like a karmic free way to get access to this realm, whereas all the philosophers before them, they had to kind of pair up with a demon, or they had to do something with the devil or with witch's Sabbath. So that's what made me so interested in this book, is like that fills so many gaps where like the shaman way, even if it's not the same as just being able to meditate and immediately get yourself there, great. We'd all love to be able to be so enlightened that you just close your eyes and you're talking with God. But taking these psychedelics could be like the non-sinful karmic free way to get there, as opposed to, literally summoning demons and actually doing like horrible things just to broaden your horizons. Now I don't have to go and like torture an entire family just to broaden my spectrum of like what's good and bad, right? Like, you have to observe and go through the worst possible tragedies in order to appreciate the opposite of that, if you go by that kind of dichotomy. But the DMT is just like, bam, there's, your spectrum just went from this to this by just going, and then now you're there. So I don't know, that's the part that I find the most fascinating. But that Mandarin dude on the comet, bro, what do you get about that?
Oh, that is such a good question. I love that you pointed out how consistent it was. It wasn't, it was implied, and it wasn't, they didn't dwell on about it. It was just like,
well, and they also just dropped the tiniest little seed early on, and they say that the herb, no one, like Descartes wouldn't tell anyone what it was or where it came from, but they knew that it came from a small island off the coast of China. And then they see this Chinese dude flying through on a comet, full of magic, and they know him. So I'm like, that's their dope man, bro. That's the connect, right? He's the plug.
Yeah, that was such a trip.
And you keep posting Yale, bro, and Yale also had a little helper, but Yale, that money came from the opium trade out of China. So
Really?
yeah, so but it to me there's like this really strange difference between the two. Whereas the Chinese herb, I think it might be a reference to Syrian rue or some other very common grass that happens to have DMT in it if you process enough.
Well,
But that's like, go ahead.
that's the thing though, Thomas, because you keep mentioning DMT. We don't truly know if it was DMT that these guys were using.
We don't know what it is. No, there's absolutely nothing to go into. But I've been doing this in particular, this subject for the last year or so, trying to figure out like, and that's how I came across this book in the first place, is because outside of this book, there's not a lot of admission of the like our ancient philosophers. I'm going to call it ancient, but our philosophers of documenting drug use and then attributing the information that they're gaining to that drug use so explicitly. This is the only book this old that talks to kind of like modern philosophy that documents this.
Of course, there's this conspiracy as well. The Descartes die of poisoning, and I'm reading through this and look at the cover to the journal that posted it. Got the two pillars there, and I don't know if that's a boat or what that is, but I just found that funny. But the idea that he was perhaps poisoned, and they're going on about it. I'm just reading through here quickly to see if Descartes could not finish this holy day standing erect in the margin letters by he felt himself so violently attacked by the evil from which he had tried to protect himself that the day before he was compelled to go to bed precisely at the time M. Shanos had started.
But this just sounds like the homunculus is acting up. You know what I mean? Like the homunculus wasn't doing his job, or someone came in and started asking deeper questions than just like, hey, bro, you okay in there? You know, they weren't just accepting like, yeah, go away. They're like, you've been in there for, I forgot how long it was. It was supposed to be like 3 or 4 days straight.
So he says here, how did the sources describe Descartes' illness and what do they tell us about his symptoms? Since Van Woolen and Bilet, which is the guy that's written biographies on Descartes, reckon with an illness that lasted 10 days. Descartes apparently fell ill on February 2nd, so 2 days ago, on the day of Candlemas. Bilet is the only source for the event of this day, so this Bilet guy is in the early morning of February 3rd, according to Schutter's report, Descartes was not able to go and meet the Queen as planned. On the morning of February 3rd, at about 4 a.m., he developed a high fever as he was about to go to the library, as he was wont to do every morning in order to see the Queen there. The fever arose, as he said, and attacked him so strong that his stomach was put on a strain, and he thought that the natural fire in him had almost been extinguished. He felt great cold and pain in his head, took only 3 or 4 spoonfuls of brandy on this day, and did nothing but sleep the following 2 days. Okay. So yeah, chill.
It aligns with the book, man. The book explains exactly what's going on. So that's all I can hear now, is that he just wasn't in his body at that point.
Right.
But it was self-inflicted.
And you guys launched this project on the anniversary of his death.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, dude, we did actually. So and check this out, and close to the check out Homeboy's birthday. February 8th. Gabriel Daniel, February 8th.
Good Lord.
Hold on. Give me 1 second. Hold on. Give me 1 second.
28 is that's the axial tilt of the differential of the elliptic plane of the Earth to the Moon.
So this guy died so Descartes died 2/11, and this guy was born 2/8. Gabriel Daniel was born 2/8. So
that's profound.
That's weird.
It's also it's a moon code because the 28 is a month. It's also a Saturnian return. That's a pretty significant number, the 2 to the 8. That's nuts, man. We're in the hot spot for these fellas right now.
And I didn't get to point this out in the episode too, but this book, I believe, was published or conceived in 1776 or one of the earlier one of the first coverages of it. I think it was in 1776, which is also kind of a hot number for Jesuits, right? Like that is exactly where the Bavarian Illuminati came from, was from a Jesuit college in Ingolstadt.
Right. It's also 888 times 2. All kinds of sacred numerology baked into that one. Now, other people will, be wise asses. My buddy Davin, he's always like, well, it's 444 times 4, which I kind of like that. That's even cooler. But it is. It's sacred numerology, no matter how you slice it.
And this is interesting here because they talk about how, but he eventually agreed to the bloodletting and was bled 3 times last Tuesday. But
that's really what killed him. I mean,
but check this out.
That's what killed him.
But only rotten blood, which was all yellow, came to light. That's weird.
Wow.
Right? Yellow blood. Never even heard of that in my life.
Well, I mean, it sounds like pus.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The plasma. Also, this sounds like it is going to sink in and harmonize with the way that Washington passed away. He came down with the cold from being out in the snow, in the elements for too long, pushed it, didn't wear his coat, came back, and he lived in absolute agony for the last 24, 48 hours because they were leeching him, they were bloodletting him, and it was just getting worse and worse. And we're pretty sure his wife was switching out the wills, and there were multiple wills getting kind of scrambled around. And then we think there were probably secret wills also. But in the end, something that came to light from Washington's will was that he had a lover, his black slave. He had a black slave who lived with him on the property, and he allowed a life stipend for that slave. And that one favored slave was allowed to stay on Washington's property with full payment for the rest of his life.
It was his homunculus. I'm sorry to say it, but
it might be the homunculus, or at least it has the pattern.
And I linked this, and this is going to be very controversial, but I'm sure that Thomas has run across this. But there's a book that I read, The Delectable Negro. Now, it's got to do with cannibalism and all this stuff. But the idea that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Thomas, because you'd be more knowledgeable.
What the fuck are you trying to say, man?
Hear me out. That in, what is it, melanin, what makes your skin darker? The idea that produces adrenochrome faster.
It's the other way around.
So can you clear that up?
So adrenochrome comes from the oxidization of adrenaline, and as it so it starts as adrenaline, and then as your body uses it up and expends it, or just decides not to use it, it basically dissolves and turns into adrenochrome. And if adrenochrome continues to dissolve and break down, it eventually becomes melanin. And in fact, if you look, there's a condition called black eye or black cornea syndrome, where an actual black disc will start to form on your cornea, and it's actually caused from an adrenaline eye drops that they used to give to people. But in this case, the adrenaline would basically decompose within your eye, turn into adrenochrome, and then the adrenochrome would turn into melanin, but it would just sit there in your eye because it didn't have access to get into the bloodstream. So anyways, that's a whole rabbit hole too, especially when you look into the adrenochrome black eye club.
Well, here's the thing.
Literally a condition called black cornea.
That book that I mentioned, it has accounts of allegedly slave owners, which are talking about George Washington and his slaves, even if they were treated better. No, they were still slaves. There were still people that were chained up and were used for labor and were treated horribly. But the idea that some of these slave owners ate their slaves, ate the black people. Some of these, I forgot which is the account. One of them was burned alive, and his fat was used for candles as wax. His fat.
It's not just eating them. It's actually torturing and then eating them, which again ties into the adrenochrome thing, because as you force someone to go through large bouts of lengthy stress, they just release nonstop adrenaline. That's all they're doing, is their body is taking every single chemical it has at its disposal, and it is using it to create adrenaline, and then it's using it to create all the compounds that are required to break that adrenaline down so that it doesn't just overwhelm your heart and give you a heart attack. So that's what's happening. If you're getting tortured either physically or mentally, the exact same result is being produced. Your body is just creating obscene amounts of adrenaline, fresh adrenaline. So in these regards, they would actually torture and kill and then eat, because now any of the blood or the flesh that you consume is going to be extremely high in adrenaline, adrenoleutin, and adrenochrome.
All right, so I know this is probably gonna get nuked off of YouTube. I don't know if I'll put this episode on YouTube, but the death of Nat Turner was the one that Turner's body was chopped and cooked after his execution, according to Newberry Alexander. The bones were divided and the fat from the body was used to manufacture soap. So it wasn't candles, it was actually soap. Lamp covers and pocketbooks were manufactured from his skin. Many believed his death was made of a symbol of warning. It was made a symbol of warning to other would-be insurgents.
No way. There's no way that's all it was a warning.
So Turner's headless bones were presumably buried in an unmarked grave. He never received an official burial. But check this out, because it gets even worse. The act instilled panic in Southerners, thereby putting a stop to the region's organized independent struggle. Instead, Southern states adopted even tougher restrictions against black slaves. Now, Turner's skull, the former mayor of Gary, Indiana, Richard G. Hatcher, wanted to establish a Library of Civil Rights museum, for which he was handed over a skull in 2002 that was likely to be Turner's. And also, I don't know if it was this one or was another one where apparently there was this girl that had I think like a small bag or wallet or something made from the skin. I don't know if it was Nat Turner's skin, but the skin of an African American slave. But look at this. They took the skull too, and they had it, and they handed it over in 2002 to this guy that was likely to be Turner's. So we have the skull and bones connection there of these people that were, again, I don't know. Hatcher gave the skull to two Turner's relatives in 2016. It is still uncertain whether the skull belongs to Nat Turner. His family has handed over the skull to the Smithsonian Institute for DNA testing to confirm whether the remains are indeed Nat Turner's. However, the family does not intend to keep the skull and wishes to bury it with his progeny, but that is dependent upon whether the results match. I don't know whatever happened with that.
So Turner's is an anagram for returns, which is a banking term. And recently, there's a really fascinating thread over with Walter Bosley's research. He's tying a strong thread to a exiled Napoleon after the Napoleonic Wars, pulling a switcheroo with his brother, which he is known to have done. We publicly know that his brother has taken the fall for him in certain ways in the past. So the individual who is recorded to be Napoleon in exile is actually his brother taking the fall. And the true Napoleon stayed stateside here in the Americas, married into some royal, probably Plantagenet family lines, and then went on to fund the Smithsonian. In that thread, it's a tentative thread. It's a speculative, tentative, Walter Bosley, one-of-a-kind thread. It's a very powerful thread for me because the Louisiana Purchase, it generates a very special shape in the state boundaries. It generates the shape of a sphinx. A lot of people see that old Chef Boyardee. That's the profile outline of the Mississippi River, but you can expand it beyond a single dude in one column standing upright. There's actually wings going all the way up to Idaho, and the whole thing is a sphinx statue in the state boundaries of the U.S.
And
that's
the
pretty
Louisiana Purchase, man, I don't know. I don't think anyone can clearly comprehend how important the Louisiana Purchase is. The bankers, I used to have to put in like these huge systems for like A.G. Edwards and Merrill Lynch and all these like banking firms. But I have to tell you, the one thing that was constant in every one of these firms is that every one of like the high execs would have the freaking Louisiana Purchase, just like bronze statues and posters and like, replicas, just all like enshrined on all the top level floors. And I mean,
wow.
The Louisiana Purchase is basically regarded as like the best deal in the history of banking, right? It's like,
Yes.
so it's seen as like whatever you're doing in banking, just try to repeat the Louisiana Purchase. But it's
Amen.
amazing how much it just persists throughout the entire like DNA and mantra of that
Easier
world.
said than done, though, right?
Yeah, well, I
Man.
mean, it wasn't a normal business deal for sure.
Yeah. So that's really profound. You're saying that. So it went for $15 million. 15 is a devil card. The feet of the devil card, it is in my territories map. That card is Louisiana, the devil card. 15 is the number of the card. And Louisiana is in the shape of the feet of this lion. And it has a lot to do with Lafayette and Lafitte, the pirate's name, and a whole mystery going on with that. But it's pretty
That pulls into
profound.
MK Ultra too, believe it or not, man. Because the guy that was behind Operation Midnight Climax, his roommate was a guy that went by Pierre Lafayette, and he claimed to have been blood relation to the pirate Lafayette.
Wow.
And don't forget L. Ron Hubbard's name. His first name was Lafayette.
No, get the hell out of town.
Let me confirm it for you. L. Ron Hubbard. His first name was Lafayette Ronald Hubbard.
Oh my
He was
goodness,
magical, bro.
gentlemen.
I mean, he was
Goodness.
he was a homunculus. He was a talisman of some sorts, 100%.
Oh yeah. So these almost everything you guys were laying out with that Descartes.
Those DSLs, bro.
Mm-hmm.
They just look like they're ready to wrap around something.
So everything you guys laid out in that Descartes Voyage project, I think is the route to to maybe many breakaway civilizations. I think they're outside of government. So MK means mind control. Government means governe mentis, means mind control. So MK means government. Ultra means beyond. So MK Ultra means either beyond governance or it means governed from beyond.
Mm-hmm.
It has.
I can get down with that. I can get down with that for sure, man.
Yeah, man. So these guys, they are outside of what jurisdictions we generally adhere to systematically, which puts them, I would say, in the wilderness. This puts them in the jurisdiction of Artemis, the goddess of the wilderness, where there's no insurance, there's no paperwork, there's no paper trails. You're actually dealing in equity, where your hands are clean. There's no receipts, there's no paper trails. So you're dealing in favors. Everything is favors. So a lot of sovereigns, they want to get in with equity. They want to master equity and understand how equity works. And the bad news for them is that's the blackmail industry. And here we have a very interesting word, blackmail. You are in the wilderness, and it's run with blackmail and influence and favors and strings pulling on your shame, the cords of your shame. It's a very diabolical jurisdiction. And it sounds nice and fluffy from where we are, but you get outside, plus ultra from government, and the liabilities are endless. I'll just say it that way.
I don't even think we're that far, man, because for example, blackmail used to require, if we talk about it, let's go back to the Bavarian Illuminati, because it's one of my favorite examples of it. In order to get in, you would have to turn over all your diaries and private correspondence, and then you would be required to keep a diary and write down all your interactions with people and the things that you did and the things that you were learning about, and then continuously turn that over to whoever was above you, eventually, bubbling up to the top of the pyramid, which was Idem Weishaupt, and
oh my gosh,
Baron von Nige. But this was essentially a blackmail operation, because that's what intelligence agencies do. They collect damaging information and then say, we're going to tell everyone about this thing unless you do this other thing. And that just goes on forever. Well, in modern day, you don't even have to send that up to the guy above you. You're just uploading your status and you're posting your pictures, and you're basically incriminating yourself nonstop across multiple, like we're doing it right now, right? We're documenting covert thoughts and then posting it to the very industries and companies that are potentially against those covert thoughts. So like we are doing half of the hard work for all of these corporations and secret societies in just one fell swoop, right?
And look what's here. Plus Ultra, of course, with Daddy Donald Trump
That looks like a mechanical Turk right there. There's like, if you go under the desk, there's like a little dude just winding it with gears.
Yeah, little homunculus operating this thing right here, 100%. But yeah, this idea that they are governed from beyond. We know which esoteric scholar has written about that before without saying their name because there's people watching. But this thing here, this has been a conspiracy for a long time.
Yeah, man. So what if so I'm gonna tell a little side story, and then I want to come back to the black male key component. So right around when Washington died, the yellow fever was kicking off. And so there was a plague raging across the land. This was a turning of an age, and everybody was terrified because they thought that these mosquitoes bringing the yellow fever were from Hades. So everybody was quarantined in their house. Meanwhile, Thomas Jefferson in the beginning he's advocating for vaccinations. He's writing in newspapers that this is a good thing. We should all get the poke. Later on, he actually eats those words publicly, which they've snuffed that out. It's hard to find him saying he wishes he hadn't promoted vaccinations. But the public believed that Haitian people, that black males were ideal for mail carriers, that they could, and so they actually used them to take over the mail system so that so the Pony Express could still run. And so this is fascinating because whenever there's an overthrow of the government or a change of real power structure behind the scenes, they also change up the foundation of whatever the mail system is, the mailing system. And so with all of that in mind, and the fact that Haitians were the ideal delivery or carriers, but they were also considered the carriers of the disease that brought the yellow fever at the same time. It's like duplicitous in this really remarkable way.
Dude, I hope I've got something to vibe on when you're done here.
Well, yeah, I just want to say that maybe they were using the illiteracy of these slaves from Haiti so that they could convey messages that they were unable to read or even, disseminate on their own. So they were kind of occulted from knowing the messages they were using. But also we know that that's where voodoos and that form of mind control. And the founding father of Hades was Mesmer. Mesmer is on the signing documents.
Mesmer, yeah.
He was on the signing documents of Hades. Okay, rant done.
So you mentioned the yellow fever, and man, this I don't. Recently, I came across this really interesting story I had never heard before, and it caught me by surprise. It's called Yellow Rain, and apparently in 1981, the U.S. accused Russia of drugging everybody with a mycotoxin, and that they were spraying mycotoxins in the air, and it was basically a biological warfare sort of initiative. And I don't know which part of this one is true. Like, this is all true, but then they basically found out that what the CIA was claiming was yellow rain was actually bee fecal matter, and that bees can go, I think, like weeks or months at a time without pooping, and then they just all of a sudden just start pooping like maniacs, and it comes out as this like yellow, like gooey looking pollen. So but depending on what the pollen that the bees were eating, it may or may not have actually sort of passed on mycotoxins from what they were grabbing. But anyways, this concept of yellow rain and bee vomit / poop in these massive quantities, and then the CIA coming into the and again, they were trying to blame the yellow rain on trying to spread malaria and a whole bunch of other like really horrible sort of diseases, but in the end it was allegedly just bee poop.
Right. So back in those days, the word yellow, it meant coward. We don't say it that way anymore, but they used to, what are you, yellow? What's the matter? You got a yellow belly? And that's really fascinating that the name of the disease back then had the cultural implication of being a coward or fearful.
Well, so and also in yellow journalism, it was implied to be like deceitful or propagandist or.
Yes. So it's fascinating that there's just subtle Twilight language going all the way back to back then. And we've lost the cultural context for it. And we just think of it single-mindedly. But
well, that's just a fancy way of saying mythology developing. Like, we've lost the original interpretation. Like, that's how sort of like Baal's Zaphon turns into Zeus. It's like the same thing. You just lose a little bit of the nuance, and the story becomes a little simplified, so you can tell it to your kids easier, and it's easier to remember. And that just keeps happening over and over.
That's so true. Yep. It makes it a quick, rapid delivery system if you just hone it all down. And the truth is always so much more nuanced and interesting.
So
sometimes it depends on how much you like the truth. Some people, once you get into the truth, it can get boring just because it's not just like the easy, quick solution answer. But the interesting stuff is when you spend, months digging into something and then you find these weird nuggets.
I'm balls deep right now I'm in the Cambridge Descartes lexicon, and I'm looking up more stuff on this Gabriel Daniel guy. And apparently, dude, it's kind of funny because it says that, let's see here. One of the things I found interesting was, here, let me see if I can pull it up. Let's see. And then, so we read this one, right? The 1691.
Correct.
But then it says here, followed by an expanded edition. And
well, no, the one we read was, I think, from 1694.
Yeah, that's when it was.
So.
Yeah, that particular publisher published it again. But followed by an expanded edition, would that be the one that we looked at?
Well, we read the English translation, so I would assume that whoever translated it into English probably used the most recent version, but I don't know for sure.
Damn, dude. What was like an entire different version that we're not even...
You got to learn French first, and not just any French, but late 17th century French.
So I'm going to do a quick numerology drop on that. 1694 adds up to 20, and the Aeon card, which is Auriga the Charioteer, is card number 20. So that's gratifying.
And then it tells me to see Vortex for some reason in this lexicon, which I'm trying to look for Vortex 757. Let's see what happens when we look up Vortex. Let's see here.
So, and as you're looking for that, I'm gonna read one part that I didn't get to, where he talks about the three vortices with the three heavens. So he says that the first heaven is nothing but a vortex where you place the earth, and the center is the body of the sun, about which celestial matter, which composes the vortex, carries us and makes us turn continuously like other planets. And then he mentions that the second heaven has many suns, with each sun being a vortex, and that the third heaven is basically void of any bounds, so it can't even be defined at that point.
So here it says the theory of vortical celestial mechanics. That sounds awesome. As presenting the principles of philosophy, and the world is the engine room of Descartes' system of natural philosophy. So here, theory with an indefinitely large chunk of divinely created matter or extension, in which there are no void spaces whatsoever. When God,
that's such a crazy concept, man. Because all you see, right? Like, where's my hand? It's just separated by space. But according to this, it's not. Like, every single bit between my eyes and my hand are completely filled with objects. It just happens to be fluid objects, which is true. But it's just amazing that they had this much intuition back then.
We have wax. The hell does wax have anything to do with it? Huh.
Wax is, this is a trip. Wax is cera, and I think that's in Latin. And it is also your brain, the cerebellum. So your brain, like wax, can be remolded and reshaped with language.
And also like the waxing and the waning of the moon.
Well, didn't you just mention bees?
Yes,
fresh from the honeycomb and still retain the scent of flowers that bees had visited, is a white and solid, but when put by the fire becomes liquid and transparent, can be formed into countless shapes. The senses of sight and touch inform us only of its temporary states.
That's Plato's realm of forms. This is Plato's realm of forms we're like talking around.
It is intellectual reason that tells. Yeah, so it's like it's got to do with like thoughts and the mind. What the?
So that's what I came away from this book was that what Descartes, or at least what this guy was writing about, was that everything started with those Platonic ideal solids with their perfect edges.
Yes.
But then as those slam into each other because of this creation of the universe, all those perfect edges and all those perfect shapes get all bent out of shape from, just smacking into each other constantly. So like it's almost like the only way to get back there is for us to return to the original form, but then everything ceases to exist.
Yeah, but that gets kind of racist, right? Because you're talking
How does
about
that get racist?
Because, dude, it's like who can go there and who is allowed to go there. And I mean, I think that's what I don't know if it was you and I that were talking about, because this kind of sort of plays into Nietzsche, where he's talking about the Übermensch, where it's like this the highest form of man, the highest possible form that is able, the superhero, right? That is able to overcome nihilism, but overcome anything that's presented in his way. And then who used that ideology? Who took that and ran with it? Come on, Thomas.
No, well, I gotta point out that there was a bad chain of custody with Nietzsche's work.
That too, yeah.
Yes, his sister took his work, and she married a religious extremist,
a high ranking, yeah.
Yes, and Hitler attended her wedding, and Nietzsche did not. So to some degree, and here we go again with if you want to change the world, you got to give somebody else the credit. Well, that also means if you want to change the world, you got to blame somebody else too. That's another way to see the same thing.
And plus, Hitler was obsessed with and allegedly obtained the spear of destiny, but that doesn't make the spear of destiny all of a sudden like an evil relic, right? Like it would still remain a holy relic.
Yes, yeah, it's how you use it. It's in the hands of the wielder, right? Whoever's holding it, and what they do with it. Because he can is it the spear of destiny that can either harm you or heal you? Is that the one? Am I thinking about the right one?
Yeah. I don't know how would the spear of destiny heal you anyways? Just because it's a holy relic and it touched the blood of God?
So I want to make a wild claim, guys. I want to make a wild claim.
You?
Yeah,
man.
I don't believe it.
Get ready. The Enneagram came from the beekeepers. The Sufi cult is called the beekeepers. My current project right now is proving out that the Enneagram and the actual movement of this vortex mathematics is blocked out like a theater production in Plato's Symposium. And so Plato's Symposium has provenance. It has a chain of custody. And it went through all of the philosophers, and Nietzsche wrote about them systematically. And so I'm going to say that, so another name for the Plato Symposium was the touchstone of the Greeks. That is very profound. That is a very important thing everybody should put in their pocket and keep forever, I'm going to claim. I believe that this is Medusa, the Gorgon. I believe that this is Gordian's knot that Alexander cut in half. I believe that this is the sword in the stone. I believe this is the spear of destiny. I'm listening to Nietzsche's analysis of all these philosophers, and I think every single one of them was handing this Enneagram system around in the background. And I can actually put Nietzsche's heroes into the Enneagram system as archetypes, as living embodiments of the concepts that were born in Plato's Symposium originally. And I'm telling you guys, I think this is all the things, like we were talking about, it can heal you or it can cut you. Well, every station of the Enneagram has an ascended healing aspect that can actually build you up or play to your strengths, but it also reveals your weaknesses. It's two-faced. It's like Janus. It's like Manichaean dualism. It has all the metaphors baked into the essence of it. And I know that sounds wild because it's too simple. It's just a ring of 9 numbers in a circle. But once you get your head around it, you can. I have proven to myself, and I'm working on it in my project right now, that it is also the blocking in the framework for Star Wars. I can probably do. I'm thinking about doing the same thing with pandemonium where Lucifer, the story of Lucifer falling, Milton's Lost, Paradise Lost, Milton's Paradise Lost. There are 9 demons who come together and they have a conspiracy, a divine conspiracy, these 9 demons. And I want to go through that story and run it through the Enneagram. I bet Plato's Symposium is going to jump to life out of the whole thing. And I know that's a wild claim, and I feel like an ass trying to oversimplify everything into something that you don't even. I don't need to. I can erase this. It can be. You can burn all the books. This knowledge will come back to life later. This is the Enneagram of all wisdom. Perennial wisdom is alive and well in this thing. And I think when it comes to the surface and it gets revealed too much, that is when they start burning books. That's when the Library of Alexandria gets laid to ashes. Gurdjieff said that the Enneagram will render entire libraries obsolete. And I fucking believe him, because this thing, the shape of it, the way it moves, is the true essence of human nature. So some of the people that Nietzsche was analyzing was this is why it's really difficult to bring everybody on the journey, because there's so much backing up my words. I feel like you kind of got to take my word for it.
I think we're like fish swimming in water a little bit here, because you said Gurdjieff, which is, I would say, not on the most accessible side of the spectrum when it comes to like his esoteric and philosophy.
Ooh.
But something that I found out earlier this week that blew my mind is that the lady that wrote the original story, Mary Poppins, was a disciple of Gurdjieff personally. She was also a direct student of Carl Jung. So this one person, and she had all sorts of ties to the Theosophical Society, and just the list goes on.
That was
and on
one of my
on.
favorite movies growing up, bro.
The Mary Poppins movie has an intense backstory. but you mentioned Gurdjieff and Mary Poppins. If you look at the whole story about Lady Comes from the Sky, all of the Chim Chimney Sweep, that song Chim Chimney is based on 2 very ancient Yiddish Russian folk songs that are talking about a woman that's trying to escape her horrible upbringing and wants to literally enter the flaming center of a star or a comet and leave the earth in this thing. And that's where the origin of the Chim Chimney song comes from. And also all of the symbology of, like, if you shake the hands of a chimney sweep, or if you rub their shoulder or their arm, and if you get soot on you, that was seen as good luck. So like the whole entire movie of Mary Poppins, 100% occult magic. It's all about, and she's a horrible person. If you rewatch it, it's horrible. And the movie ends talking about the Boston Tea Party leading to the American Revolution, which caused a run on the British banks run by Nathan Rothschild. That this is all in the Mary Poppins book and movie, by the way. You probably don't remember it because as a kid, it's just like dancing penguins and they're sugar and sugar makes everything nice.
Let me see which is the one that I watched. Let me double check. Hold on. The one I watched was
probably the 1964. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right.
It is alchemical. She's actually I would actually argue that the chimney sweep, Dick Van Dyke, is a homunculus because he's the little black chimney man.
Let's go ahead and move on, dude.
Did you guys see Dick Van Dyke's public announcement recently? He came on. He did an announcement. He's got a little reading script, and his hands can barely hold still. It's hard to believe he's actually reading the paper because he's shaking so much. But he's got a huge sty in his eye. It's immense. It's a total distraction.
97. Oh my god, bro.
And guess what's in the background while he's reading the script? There's a dummy, a chimney sweep dummy doppelganger with a red scarf around its neck in the background. The whole thing is just signaling to the max. And let me point out also that we have a comet. And the comet is going through the chimney of the celestial spheres. It's going to cut right through the North Pole, the Polaris. And so they're putting out this chimney sweep as this comet is sweeping over the chimney of the celestial alignment in the North Pole. And also, I would say that maybe the old umbrella, it's a Freudian symbol because it's phallic, it pops open. But then Freud it's like also a torch or a mantle. He hands that to Carl Jung. But I would say that if you look at the Enneagram in a certain light, it could be a kilted umbrella because it has those crisscrossing spokes on the interior of the umbrella. So if you look at an Enneagram, it could be encoding an umbrella to those who are in the know. Oh, and by the way, Umbria is the hombres. This is the brotherhood. This is a symbol of the brotherhood.
And also, it doesn't just shield you from the rain and the elements, it also shields you from the light.
Good call, which is the only place where cacao can grow in the shadiness. Juan, will you pull up that cacao graphic? I've been blasting it all around on the telegrams. I think I put it on very recently. It's got the flower in the middle. This Wednesday, the day of Descartes' death, we were doing a herb walk over on the Interverse channel with our buddy Kyle from Tippecanoe Herbs and Michelle from Michelle's Healing
Which one
Homes.
do you want me to pull up?
The one with the flower on it.
You sound a lot of shit, Gabe.
It's got a creepy looking flower and a big red flag in the middle. So we were looking at and doing an analysis of cacao because we're moving into chocolate season. We're moving into Valentine's Day. Yeah, buddy. And he shows this flower, and I'm looking at this flower. It's a perfect picture. You look at any other picture of this flower, and you're not going to see it because it's not lined up exactly at the right perfect angle. So you can call me, you can say I've got some synesthesia going on here, which I might agree. But I'm looking at the flower, and he's describing its scientific nature and how it's so important here in Valentine's Day because it opens up your heart chakra, your heart center, which, without going too into the weeds, if we're in February now, the moon is filling up in Leo, and the Leo is the heart of the zodiac. So opening your heart during February is actually a moon spell, reflective, 180 across the zodiac to Leo. So your heart opening in Valentine's Day is so profound and appropriate. But I'm looking at this thing and I'm thinking, that looks like Baphomet. But I'm not going to say anything. I don't want to ruin anybody's fucking Valentine's Day plans. I don't want to tell people that the Dark Lord has dominion over their chocolate.
Why not? I mean, we're talking about Nestle essentially, right? I mean,
yeah,
I'd
man.
be just
Here
as
it
worried
comes.
about Nestle as Baphomet.
You got it. A spoonful of sugar makes this medicine go down real nice, right? Now check this out. The scientific name up there, Theobroma. I happen to know that in philology, there's a very rewarding method that you can take. When you see R and O, you convert it into the Greek P because it's a flag. This is a claim. This is a hallmark. This is a space filler. It's a very powerful linguistical device, a spell, very powerful spell. So you pull the P out of the letters, and then you play with the remaining letters. And when you plug the P back in, you get Baphomet. And this makes crazy sense to me all of a sudden because we know that the Knights Templars were imbibing in some sort of beverage that would open their heart. That is a quintessential cult technique. They
were drinking chocolate milk. They were drinking Nesquik, weren't they?
They were, totally, man, totally. So then, as I go in a little deeper on the name of the tree, it has another anagram hiding within, and that anagram is Machiavelli. And that's kind of freaking me out because through the Nietzschean lens that I'm doing this breakdown on the Thoth deck in the Enneagram, I find out that he wrote extensively about Machiavelli and was quite tuned in to the Machiavellian methodologies. Now, something I want to say here is these guys are long dead in the spirit of their insight is overgrown the life of a single human being. So when I say Machiavelli, I am speaking of the spirit of what has been taken up by others and proliferated in culture. So it's not just one man anymore. This is the spirit of Machiavelli and the methodology of knowing what Machiavelli was all about. And that really hit a chord for me. So I put this next to the Baphomet so everybody can see very obviously. It's even got the goat, the hairs on the chin. And the fruit of it looks like tatas, looks like a nice rack of abundance. But now check this out, fellas. What was one of the rules to letting the homunculus take dominion over your body while you're gone? One of the rules was don't eat beans.
You're right.
Coffee, chocolate, they all come from a bean. And this is kind of freaking me out a little too much because in communion, which is initiation, you're drinking this chocolate, you're having a communion. In the book Communion, that individual was instructed not to eat the chocolate, and he did anyways. And because he did, he was unable to impose his will. And the aliens, allegedly, from his story, and the aliens kind of had we'll just say, they were able to compel him because he broke that agreement. And that goes back to Pythagoras, which freaked me out. You
beat me to it.
Yeah, buddy. Here we go.
Well, I wanted to throw in here too another bean is the mezcal bean, which could basically be an analog or a source for mescaline. And if you think about tying in this Descartes, right, and I'm going to say DMT, it could be many different things. If you look back at when all of these different plants were starting to get named and categorized around the same time, 1500s, 1600s, they're cataloging every single animal, plant, everything. Almost every single plant that was rumored to let you have some kind of communion with God was named, devil's something, devil's grass, devil's root, devil's. So anything that you could take that gave you a shortcut immediately to this, this other realm, they named it as devil's things. So as you say, Baphomet, right? And that the Knights Templars are worshiping Baphomet and they're worshiping Satan. This might also just be code for like, they had that good stuff, right? They had to connect to the DMT, and that's what worshiping Baphomet was. And when they say don't eat the beans, it's like don't spill the beans about the beans.
So this is funny because I looked up communion, do not eat the chocolate, because the chocolate is at the core of the movie theaters, right? You eat chocolate at movie theaters, you eat chocolate during Valentine's Day. And don't they call it what's the thing when you eat it, it makes you horny? And
aphrodisiac.
Is it an aphrodisiac, or is it when you mix it with like something else that makes you?
I think it is. Yeah, I think it's an aphrodisiac that it probably makes for a good vehicle for other accelerants of a similar nature. So, I would say.
I looked up communion and chocolate, and I came across this article: chocolate versus the Catholic
Church. I looked up the communion and chocolate. What?
Whoa!
But check this out. Apparently, because chocolate wasn't, has various forms, right? So apparently, because cacao can be prepared in many different ways and take on both a solid and a liquid form, the main question was whether or not chocolate was liquid or solid. If it were deemed a food or a solid, if one consumed chocolate during a period of fasting, then one would be committing a mortal sin. Okay, so the controversy was even more complex because of the numerous nutritional ingredients that can be added to chocolate, including maíz. Mexican physician Juan de Cardenas began the debate in Mexico in 1591 by interpreting the word drink into two different ways. Okay, so we have this controversy at the church of, if you're fasting, are you allowed to drink chocolate milk or chocolate itself? And Dominican Friar August in Davil Padilla wrote in favor of consuming chocolate during the ecclesiastical fast. This ruling was favored among some members of the church because they like chocolate milk. Later, around 1636, Spaniard Antonio, this is in the 17th century, bro. Okay. If chocolate were concocted with plain water, it was merely a drink and did not break the fast. Individuals continued to put forth arguments. So This is church history. They're arguing whether you can drink chocolate or not.
If you look at the link I posted in the chat here, there's something called a chocolate shooter, which was a device created in the 1800s in which you would actually snort chocolate instead of cocaine. And this is a real thing. This actually, yeah, it says it dates back to the early 19th century. And I think recently there was like some famous, like a celebrity chef style guy that recreated one. You can actually order like a little chocolate shooter kit, and it comes with the little apparatus, and it comes with different types of powdered cacao beans so that you can actually snort it yourself. But
I've never
this was a real
snorted
thing.
anything. Does it hurt, Thomas? I've never snorted.
Why would I know?
I've never snorted anything in my life, so I don't think
probably feed it. You could feed it to the chocolate starfish.
I wouldn't want to do that either, but an odd invention.
Yeah, it would definitely hurt. I assume that snorting chocolate would not feel good on your sinus.
But check this: chocolate has properties of being a stimulant, relaxant, euphorant, aphrodisiac, tonic, and antidepressant. So,
and I'm going to call BS here, though. It says, in fact, cacao and chocolate are not drugs. BS. They both immediately result in the release of dopamine in your brain, the exact same receptors that are triggered by anything else. I mean, that is the definition of a drug, is something that you take from outside your body and put it in your body, and it changes how your body, specifically your brain, works.
Whoa,
so
yeah.
It does. Chocolate releases dopamine. It's a drug.
Good call.
Which spikes significantly leading to... Okay, so despite the way you're talking about, there has been research that illustrates chocolate may have a drug-like effect. Yeah. University of Michigan News reported a study on finding on rat subjects which documented a surge in chemical called enkephalin, an opiate-like endorphin, which spikes significantly when rats consumed M&Ms, leading them to consume more than double the amount. Researchers found that the enkephalin's mechanism of action generates intense motivation to consume pleasant rewards. The same brain area we tested here is active when drug addicts see drug scenes. Yikes, bro. Okay. Damn. And not to mention maybe feeling this strange renowned chocolate called chocolate shooter.
It sounds funny, but it's a real... I mean, this pre-exists anyone that you've ever met alive, because it's back in the 1800s.
So was Descartes snuffing cacao?
The China link, man. If we take him at his word that it came from off the coast of China, maybe. But I still am leaning towards something closer to Syrian rue. And Syrian rue is like this mystical, still somewhat undefined thing, but there's a lot of links that say that it just links to a very common type of reed grass, which in some cases can have DMT in it.
All right, so I pulled up ancient psychedelics from China. Langtang, Yungshi, Fanku. I could be saying all these wrong. I'm just saying it like in a Chinese accent or something, just to be stupid, but all can cause hallucinations in peoples. In the past, this significance has not been fully divulged. So, hallucinogenic plants in Chinese herbals. So, we have the Chinese botanist academic.
They obscure the mind and alter one's consciousness.
Where does it say that?
Right after the purple bit.
Plants of this kind all talk, which can obscure the mind, alter one's consciousness, and confuse one's perception.
Look at this, bro. 1561, right? So 1561 would be about 100 years before the book was written. So this would have been maybe a generation or two before the old man. And it says, right here, it says, a wandering monk from 1561 of the Shensi province who possessed wizardry.
Where are you reading that, bro?
Look at that.
It's the if you don't smooth, yeah, right there. That's it. That's the dude that possessed wizardry from around 100 years before.
Changshu,
a reddish potion, bro. What's with this reddish? From your homeboy John D. and Edward Kelly and adrenochrome.
Yeah, this is very likely
crazy and violent. We're
talking.
Bro,
he killed them all. Wait, what? Changshi visualized his entire family as all devils and thereby killed them all, 16 altogether, without any bloodshed.
Tell me, and after taking a red potion, this sounds like adrenochrome.
Wow.
He then spat out 2 spit spoons of phlegm, became conscious, and found himself that he killed his parents. Brothers, sisters-in-law, wife, sons, sisters, and nephews. Damn, dude.
That's in a Greek myth too. There's somebody from Greek mythology. It's a little obscure, but they have the same thing. They go through a vision and kill a bunch of people, end up regretting it.
Don't say it. Don't say the fucking word, Juan.
What? Oh.
I, I'm gonna say it. I want to maybe put red mercury as a potential culprit, which I've actually heard a recipe that is very convincing to me. I haven't tried it myself. Using a Tesla coil to transmute mercury, which comes from red mercury, comes from Cinnabon, into gold. And some of the ingredients to do so requires a nail into a crucible, these are the ingredients of the very sacred book. A nail on a crucible, turning things to gold.
When you say nail in a crucible, I think a sword in the stone too.
Dude, some of these effects of these things are crazy. Like, check this out. For the seed, when taken, when properly prepared for a prolonged period, enable one to walk for long distances, benefiting to the mind and adding to the strength, and to communicate with spirits and seeing devils. When taken in excess, one can stagger madly. Then this one over here, the flowers could enable one to see spirits, and when taken in excess, could cause one to stagger madly. If taken over a prolonged period, they produce somatic levitation and affect communication with spirits. What does that even mean?
The first one you were talking about is a type of hensbane, and hensbane would be scopolamine. Scopolamine being one of the very first psychedelics that the CIA was testing on people, that they found that the Nazis were testing in Germany. But scopolamine is also known as like the Black Death drug, or like the Devil's Terror. It's the one that if you have enough of it, just your entire reality becomes complete nightmare, just a waking nightmare, every part of it.
Okay, I want to throw in the mix. HB is a really nefarious moniker, and I think it one of many threads to the Hensbane, right? HB Hensbane. One of the many threads is the hunting of human beings, but I think it also goes back to the Black Hand, and the Black Hand is like those who were not to be named for a very long period of time, and they had a monopoly on a lot of these herbs and spices and intoxicants that we know were historically very influential.
Wow. Okay, and then I'm also seeing here, check this one out. This one was used by the Taoists. Records how Taoists used the red variety. We know that the Taoists were also alchemists. So by boiling or brewing, it can be used for abdominal parasitic worms, or for seeing spirits. So while you're cleansing, you might see some spirits floating around. Who knows? So the red
what
kind.
drug that is. I can't find anything on this.
On which one?
The one that you're reading right here, the Phytolacca acinosa. I mean, I found a couple pages on it, but none of them actually say what the active ingredient would be. Oh, here we go. American Nightshade. Phytolacca americana is what we call nightshade. So this is sort of like a Chinese variant of nightshade.
Yeah, the
which
sativa.
I think is also scopolamine. I'm not wrong.
Nice. So nightshade, we kind of sussed this out a while back on our herb walks with Interverse. Nightshades is an anagram for Hades things. And this just kind of supports what you were saying about if they didn't want people getting involved in these particular products, they would just put a scary name to them to keep people's hands off of them.
Dude, listen to this too. How did Descartes say he died? Was through horrible stomach pains and hallucinations. So one of the ingredients of that particular drug, the Chinese nightshade and the American nightshade, it says toxic with a bitter taste, and that it causes neurological disorders, abdominal pain, hallucinations, and headaches. And then it also goes on to mention the belladonna and datura. So these are all of that. That's scopolamine, hycosamine, and DMT essentially all combined into one. But we're kind of talking about scopolamine right now, which would be terrifying to take and think that you're going to go and learn about philosophy. I don't know if anyone can learn philosophy on scopolamine. Honestly, this might be one of those like the jukes, right? Like they're trying to make you think it's scopolamine and not let you know it's something else, which I still am going to think it's DMT. But
Yes.
but imagine thinking that they gave you the recipe and you go and you find these Chinese herbs and it's just absolute hell. Like that, you would be seeing devils. That's exactly what they're describing there.
Right.
And isn't that what
man.
Descartes said? Is that he was seeing like devils everywhere?
Yeah, that the devils were trying to like take over him, and he was having
This-
really. Do any of those give you vivid dreams? Because that's also remember
so scopolamine is known as giving you waking nightmares. So you wouldn't realize that you're actually conscious and walking around because your entire reality feels like you're in a dreamlike state, but you're seeing nightmares and you're feeling nightmares even as you're actively awake and you can talk to people. You're still in the middle of a waking dream, essentially.
Whoa, yo, these would make dope ass shirts too. These images that you made. I would definitely rock a shirt with that on it, bro.
Yeah, dude, that is cool as hell. It's got his bottle.
We should start doing shirts for every episode we do, like on the topic, and put out like some. Look at that, like that. I would wear a Descartes smoking a blunt or a.
I was
doobie
trying to
on
get one with the like a straw in his nose, but it wouldn't play ball with me for that one. I got a couple weird ones, but nothing that looked like he was doing anything specific.
Why don't you show us the best ones? Because I know you have it randomly going around.
Or I'll just click through some of them.
So I love this idea of like.
I really like these ones here.
Yeah,
wow. So like one of Machiavelli's books that he spoke on consistently was Dante's Inferno. He would often refer to the fact that he had one by his side all the time. I think in his statuary, he's actually holding a copy of Dante's Inferno in his hand, as though that were a crucial cipher for any Machiavellian-oriented mentalities going forward. But Dante's Inferno is absolutely a psychedelic journey into the beyond. In what's fascinating is DMT and Dante are so powerfully correspondent, not only in the sound of the title, but also in the fact that the beginning of the Inferno, the first chapter is Inferno, where you would smoke something or put it in your stomach for digestion. It goes into the amphora of your stomach or your lungs. The next stage is purgates, purgatorio, where you either blow out the smoke or you puke and shit yourself, depending on your drug here.
That's my kind of party.
Yes, and then the third and final stage is paradisio, and that's where you ascend on to whole other levels. And so this rough outline fits so many drugs, but it just blows my mind that we call DMT, and it is like a hand in a glove for the journey of Dante, which is the cipher for Machiavelli.
I recently got a message about Dante's Inferno, and let me read it here because they broke it down pretty interestingly. And he said something at the beginning that I want you to hear. So here you go. He says,
"Oh,
yeah, I came across. No, man, this is the wrong guy. I get so many messages. Go ahead.
Yeah, I got one more thing, and this is a stretch, which is my specialty. But Toxoplasmosis gondii has TMD as significant hard consonants in the phrase, but reversed. Toxoplasmosis gondii has the initials of DMT also intrinsic to the into that word, and we know that toxoplasmosis takes people into crazy, profound psychedelic levels of consciousness, and may have been harnessed and weaponized to a profound degree. Like, can you imagine like boiling down the contents of many cats' bladders and then serving it up for a mind control spell back in the days? And that's conceivably what led to the Black Death. in the plagues of was that 1312, right after 1312, when Jacques Molay was burnt in front of Notre Dame.
And that was the leader of the Knights Templar, no?
Yeah, and the those guys they confessed under torture to have been worshiping the Baphomet, but also to kissing the ass of cats,
Yeah.
which is how toxoplasmosis would be administered. Maybe it might have even been boiled down again, mixed up with who knows what else, and then given to the initiate to generate some kind of psychedelic
Don't
next
they
level
also
initiation.
feed cat coffee beans and then they poop them out and then it's like the most expensive? Maybe it's not cats, but there's like a certain. I could have sworn it was a cat. You ever heard that before?
No,
it's like the
that's
most expensive coffee on the planet. They feed it to some animal, and it goes through this digestive process.
Are you sure that's not fake, bro? I've seen that. I know what you're talking. The little.
Oh no, it's not fake. It's definitely not fake.
Was it like a lemur or something like that?
Maybe it's a lemur.
So check this out. This guy says, I'm not gonna say his name because he says he doesn't. He doesn't. I'm not looking. Look, I'm just going to say this, but I only have hundreds of them. I'm not interested in doing podcasts or anything like that. So that's what he said. So he goes, specifically gematria, salvia, and heroic doses of mushrooms in complete darkness. I have met thousands of entities, remember many past lives, and have insane amounts of information for anybody who wants it. But that gematria, is that, haven't you talked to us about that before?
That's a nickname that's a street jargon for DMT. We call it Dimitri.
Okay.
Slang.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I'm retarded.
Get with the kids, man.
Come on, dude. I'm not a drug addict, Thomas. Come on.
That's
man.
pretty profound. Okay, so I'm gonna speculate something really fun in the mix here, since we're talking about cats eating
That guy
coffee.
was a homunculus writing to me, right, in my DMs.
It is a cat, by the way. It's an animal called a civet, but it is
Pull it up.
described as cat-like. I'll give you a link to
Okay.
it.
You're cat-like, Thomas.
So on the Isle of Man, there is a rare breed of Manx cats, and the people of the island of Man call themselves the Manx people. They're named after this cat. And anywhere where feral cats start to overdominate the population, the people take on this Toxoplasmosis gondii culturally, and it has profound effects, and they are living in a whole nother world over a long period of time. So I just wanted to throw that possibility out, because the Isle of Man is like ground zero for a lot of things, including, I think, including Miss Twyman's research that was just kind of bubbled up.
Now you're definitely going to get us taken down.
Yeah, dude, come on, man. Come on, bro. So check this out. Kopi Luwak, also called Cafe Cut Chun Fox Dung Coffee in Vietnam. I have a buddy of mine who lives in Vietnam. I'm gonna hit him up about this. In the Philippines, is a coffee that's prepared.
1 pound, $600, and up to $100 for 1 cup of this coffee.
Okay, so fox hunting is black market slang for hunting humans. But I love what you were saying earlier, Thomas, about maybe that's a dodge. Like, we think we come up on something and we're like, ooh, we figured it all out.
I'm going to go do a bunch of scopolamine. I got it. Yeah.
And I don't mind, right? And if people think I'm hunting humans, that's okay, because that'll keep them occupied while we hide the actual, because they're not going to find me hunting humans.
And honestly, getting into the dicey situation here, but I honestly still believe Jesus and Santa are both mushrooms, and almost like every religious text is talking about mushrooms. But if you go into that, like Baphomet and the Knights Templar, you would probably rather say, yeah, we were worshiping Satan and we were kissing, cat asses, instead of divulging the actual secret of the universe to someone that would torture you over it.
That's a plea bargain. You're taking a plea bargain. Like, yeah, you can say all this horrible shit, but don't tell them what the real nitty gritty was.
And I mean, you could probably draw a pretty straight thread directly to the Salem witch trials, and a lot of ones similar, where Tituba was this, basically came from like the Caribbean area and would have brought a lot of that knowledge of, Paracelsian, just take a little bit of this and a little bit of this, and you'll trip out and see things and talk to demons. And she gives it all the white girls, and the white girls can't handle it, so then they spill the beans, and then all of a sudden everyone's getting in trouble.
There it is. Don't spill the beans.
Don't spill the beans, dude. Maybe that is literally talking about like do not reveal, the the origin of life, which is the beans, and that's the Pythagoreans.
Wow, man.
Whoa.
What a wild weave this is. This is really something.
Yeah, and like that. What is it? The man, the Jack and the Beanstalk, right? And the magic beans. You have jelly beans, and then I'm gonna try and weave something together here real quick to see if it's there or not. But Rabbi Elias, I believe, is his name. Let's see, Jack and the Beanstalk, because this guy. Hold on.
Jack and the Beanstalk is Jabs. Jabs.
Mm-hmm.
Ain't that something?
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. So, Jack and the Beanstalk is an English fairy tale. It appeared as the story of Jack Spriggins and the Enchanted Bean in 1734. And so, who was the first one to write this? Because...
And I want to point out, we're on this thread, dude, but like, here we go back into the adrenochrome cannibalism angle, because remember, it was fee fi fo fum.
Mm-hmm.
I smell the blood of an Englishman, but then he threatens that he says, be he alive or dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread. So it's like this full circle of like psychedelics and cannibalism and torture and eating people.
And Pan.
It's this weird freaking Ouroboros connection, man.
Yes, to make my bread is Pan. Pan is bread, which is the goat god.
Pain or pain in French,
pain,
right?
Yes. Wow, fascinating.
So they even had it in the Magic School Bus too. Had it in one piece. And the reason I bring this up,
I just saw on the Wikipedia page the original story of Jack. Oh man, Jack and the Beanstalk. The giant's name is Gog Magog. Which is not only the biblical connotations of that, but Skull and Bones. I believe that was the Bush family took on Gog and Magog. That was Bush Senior and Grandpappy Bush.
The reason I bring this up, and I'm gonna try and weave it into this, but Francois Rabelais, however you say that, he's French, Renaissance, of course, writer, physician, monk, and Greek scholar. He is primarily known as a writer of satire, of grotesque, and of bawdy jokes and songs. So this is the guy that came up with "Do What Thou Wilt." This was the first guy to ever say that. And check this out, because so Gargantua and Pantagruel relates to the adventures of Gargantua and his son Pantagruel and the tales of adventures. You're right, festive, gross, the first book. And I could have sworn there was giants in this. The narrator
this is a story about giants.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a giant. So there a giant far too large for Noah's Ark, stating that really the giant raining a flood. So check this out.
This is where the word gargantuan comes from.
Yeah, and here, check this out. Look at this. Theleme and Abbey of Theleme.
Yeah, buddy.
So we have the Crowley connection here, and this is him in the second novel, and this was in the 15th century. Okay, he had an Abbey of Theleme, right? Theleme and the Abbey of redirect here that for spiritual center founded by Aleister Crowley, the Abbey of Thelema in the second novel Gargantua M, whatever built by a giant Gargantua. It differs markedly from the monastic norm. And this is also linked to the Hellfire clubs too. Only the good-looking are permitted to enter. The inscription on the gate to the abbey first sets out who is unwelcome: hypocrites, bigots, and pox-ridden Goths, Magos, straw-chewing law clerks, usurers, Grinches, old or officious.
No fatties.
Burners of heretics. When the members are definitely positive, the text becomes more inviting. So then it says here, where's the "do what thou wilt"? Right here. So it was that Gargantua had established it, and their rule was there was only one clause: do what you will. because
Okay,
people.
I'm gonna predate this with another philosopher inside the circle from 212 BC. Uh, but I didn't want to interrupt because I think you're totally right on to say this phrase is popping up on the map under this guy's name. But I learned a couple weeks back that Archimedes of Sardinia, his dying words as the Romans were infiltrating the temple and taking prisoners, they were trying to take him, and he refused to even pay attention to the Roman soldiers who had their swords drawn, and instead he was drawing circles on the ground.
The
And they
fuck?
don't tell us what those circles on the ground were, but we might infer that those were magical rites of protective wards. And
Wait. So start from the beginning because now
yeah,
you've piqued my interest. So
yes,
you said, okay, go ahead.
Archimedes of Sardinia was alive from 287 to 212 BC, allegedly. I'm not attached to the time frames, but that predates what you were saying by far, right? So uh, he was being taken prisoner when the Romans attacked the Greek city. Now, this city was it was Greek culture, but I believe it was near or around Alexandria. You know, so it's like North Africa, Greek city, where there's a huge convergence in this time frame of Greek culture, Jewish
Is
culture,
this the
philosophy.
Archimedes? Like,
This is the Archimedes, and
Which
his
was also the
dying.
name of the owl in Sword in the Stone, by the way.
Oh shit! Circles. There's the fucking Enneagram, y'all. Okay, that is awesome. Thank you so much. So yeah, as he's being taken prisoner, he refuses to go with the Roman soldier who's waving the sword around. Well, meanwhile, he's waving his pencil around. He's drawing these circles on the ground, and his dying words were, "Do what thou wilt, Roman." And so they killed him. And so those are
no. Where's your source for that?
uh,
Sorry to call
I
you out, Gabe, but I'm trying to, because this is huge because I link even the Archimedean solids,
yes,
which plays into Plato, which plays into Descartes, because all these guys are linked with with mathematics, geometry, and Descartes was obsessed also with turning his ideas into the Platonic solids. So it's like
yeah.
this sort of manifestation, and then you have these guys before they die, what they do some Full Metal Alchemist shit where they draw a circle around them to try and do what?
Right. And even here's a thought, like maybe the lesson here is that the Greeks were of a knowing that was so it was so protected that no Roman could crack the code. And so he's in the circle, he's inside the circle, he knows all the secrets of the circle, he's got the decoder ring extraordinaire, and he doesn't give a fuck what the Romans try to do because he knows that this is perennial wisdom. It will come back, it will live again another day. And so they can slay him if they want. The truth of the secrets will prevail in the end. And small-minded Roman soldiers are never going to penetrate the truth of the inner circle of secrets.
Although a lot of the Roman soldiers were exclusively the members of the cult of Mithras, right? So you had to be a
Yes,
Roman soldier in order to even get access to that deep knowledge. But then within there, you probably had to be, like
yes,
a high-ranking 4-star general equivalent.
with no dick left at this point at all. Not even a nub. You're like down to a smoothie.
Unless that again is one of those things where it's like if you read it for yourself and you don't have the person with the decoder ring,
Yeah.
you're chopping yourself up, right? But it's like, oh, they didn't they didn't know how to read that part, and it's like, haha.
Yeah, and the story that you're talking about, because I've heard about this before. He's the one that
Yeah.
didn't want to leave his work, and that's what it says. Allegedly, he was killed because he refused to leave his mathematical work. But I'm
Right.
not seeing
Do what thou wilt.
yeah, do what do what thou will, and then he got killed. But yeah, I have heard about that, about him dying because he wouldn't leave his work, and that might be allegorical to like don't focus too much on what you're doing and be aware, spend time outside.
If so, amor is Roma.
Mhm.
So do what thou wilt, Roman, has the key words for the thelemic "do what thou wilt" shall be the whole of the law, love under will, love whatever they're. I don't know. I'm not in the fucking group, but it has Roma, the love, that is outside of the circle, and he is being willful in the circle. So whatever this story is, I see an even deeper penetrating allegory baked into his death scene. And also I'm going to say this too: the word slogan is a translation for the battle cry of a dead army, and so he was dead already, and that became a slogan. "Do what thou wilt" became a slogan. It's a battle cry of the dead. And that's kind of fascinating. There's a lot to that. Battle cry of the dead is a slogan. There's a whole side weave on that.
That could be woven into necromancy at that point, repeating the words of the dead.
Yes.
So this guy here said, "Hold on, let me finish my mathematical problem before you kill me."
He's got that Freemason symbolism all over the place here.
What is a circle here? You got the globe, right?
You've got the perfect square on the bottom, right? The perfect.
This looks like a Black Mirror to me here. I don't know, but you can kind of see like a circle and a cross on it. You have the lion or something there. So you have the little homunculus in the back with the something in his hand, and this dude's about to just freaking stab him. He's like, "Yo, get off your freaking."
He's like, "Hold on, bro. I just gotta finish one more circle."
So that's the death of Archimedes, and yeah, I definitely have heard about this before. And let's see here, if we have any more pictures.
And his name is like look to the ark. His Arke Medes. Medes is like look to. Mida.
The last words attributed to Archimedes: "Do not disturb my circles."
There's something wild. I'm struggling to remember the exact name or location, but there's like a church somewhere in Italy. I want to think it's in Milan. I'm probably wrong on that. And it was built on top of an older sort of Roman temple. But there was a story about this child, like almost like a saint, and everyone knew he was special, or at least all of the priests knew he was special because the kid could just draw perfect circles. You could walk up to the wall and draw a perfect circle without the use of a compass or any special tools. And they end up basically adopting this kid into the church, and he ends up drawing all the halos around all the heads of all the saints and everything, because he was able to do it from hand. And the ability for a human to draw a perfect circle by hand on the first try, it's almost seen as like almost a miracle. Like he's like the LeBron James of drawing circles, essentially.
Oh, that's a song from Tool, "Perfect Circles."
Really? Because that reminds me of something I got here where it's.
And Tool is Tool right here, 2 L's. This is the golden that generates the golden square, the perfect rational proportion, which I think is phi.
That could also be two golf clubs on top of each other, which would be the 2-ball cane.
Oh, snap. I'll
give you 2 balls, Thomas. So here we have this Michael Meyer guy, and I keep always going back to this alchemical text. It's got all these weird plates, and I know you had one that had the little black baby and the red baby in it, no?
Yes. Okay. In my you're talking about my tarot, the tarot system?
Yes. Is it the sun card?
No, it's on the Thoth deck. It's the Lover's card that has a black king and a blonde queen are getting married, and at their feet, like a checkerboard pattern, there is a crisscross where the white baby is under the black king and the black baby is under the white queen. So it's almost, I think I think they're implying chess moves and strategy in that card, but it also, I've come to believe that it is referring to Francois de la Rochefoucauld, is a French philosopher who is carrying on the tradition of the symposium in France. They did symposiums in France. They called them salons, which means the room, which is a very interesting fact, because I think it refers to the side door jurisdiction of the psychic realm, actually, as well. But in his tarot card, the Lover's card, which I can substantiate by his family crest and his iconography, the pictures he's wearing, a white, black spotted fur coat is his family logo in his paintings and in his family crest. And that is what the king and the queen are wearing in that Lover's card. So he was a master of self-love. And he had a philosophy. He was also the founding father of psychology, this Francois de la Rochefoucauld. And the foundation of psychology is based on his philosophy, which is that everybody is just in it for self-love. So that's a nihilistic cul-de-sac. I think it's a bad philosophy to be plugging into anybody's worldview. And it's also a circle jerk.
I was going to say, by being a master of self-love, it sounds like every teenager. And this is one of my favorite images actually right here. This is an image of him inventing the first pizza.
But check this out. So check this. We have emblema with a 21XX1, and we'll wrap it up on this because this is really interesting, and we'll see what comes from next. I don't know what we're going to be talking about next, but I think this is a perfect segue into Jung, right? Because he was into alchemy and into all this sort of weirdness. But make of the man and woman a circle, of that a quadrangle, of this a triangle, of the same a circle, and you will have the stone of the philosophers. So you have the compass here, right?
Yeah.
You have some other weird, obscure stuff on the ground. You have the homunculus, essentially what it is there. And I'm wondering if this is a map of some sorts, right? Like if these are shapes of something. It kind of looks like that a little bit, like the And then he goes on to talk about it here. And one of the things that stood out, Plato and the most excellent philosopher was the opinion that those notions or ideas which are the foundations of arts and sciences are as it were actually engraved and imprinted upon the mind of man, and that by the repetition and remembrance of them he could apprehend and know all manner of learning. So that's what Plato was about. He said that we already knew everything that there is to know. We already know it. We just have to remember it, actively remember it. To prove this, he introduced a young lad, rude and uninstructed, and asked him such geometrical questions that the youth might be perceived to answer right whether he will or no. And although before he understood nothing of the matter, yet by these answers seem to have penetrated into the depths of I can't read that. What is that? Depths of
so abstruse a science.
So abstruse a science, from whence he concluded that in children all discipline and doctrine is not at first taken in and learned, but called to mind and brought by the memory, alluding by this to the annus magnus, or great year. Anus. Magnus.
Oh man.
The great
yes.
anus.
So
the great year. So check this out. A great war of which he says that 48,000 solar years ago, before the revolution of the heaven, the same persons, things, and actions were then in being, which are at the present time, whensoever that is. Okay, I'm gonna stop reading this because this is
okay. So the old calendar was a 9-month year, which comports perfectly to my Enneagram project. 40-day months, 8-day weeks. It's an ancient calendar. It's called the Roman Fasti calendar, but it predates the Romans. It goes back to Greece. And so I have always thought that those at the real high echelons are operating on a completely different calendar system that is not disclosed to us. I think they're operating on a 9-month year. So that, I think, might be a hint towards that idea. If you bring that picture that he's drawn on the wall, if you were to take that and then look, well, here, I'll pull the card over and you guys can look at it.
And he also goes on to say, they ask him, because at the top of Plato's door at the school, it says that no one ignorant of geometry was there to be admitted. It's like, how are you supposed to go learn if you don't know about geometry? If you're ignorant of it, then how can you go to it?
Well, I mean, I think that's like separating the people that needed to learn about it versus the ones that already knew and were ready for like that next level.
Hold on. Let's see here. We can make this to where he's here, and then I can. There we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that general triangle, the emanating circles, those are actually swords. But you see that so they're telling you to bring the male and the female together there. But here, they're actually up in the corners. They're not together. They're apart. And my ultimate thesis recently has taken an interesting turn. I'm going to make a really standard Slick Dissident bold claim. I think that the Enneagram that's being implemented in our culture is inversion. I think that the 3 and the 6 need to switch their nature. The numbers can stay the same. The numbers aren't what matters. The characteristics that are and the archetypes that are sitting in the position of the 3 and the 6, I think they need to switch for it to be a healing modality. And so I think that the Star Wars spell of this tarot deck being infused into the Enneagram, it's a bad construct. And it is designed to essentially break love, to malfunction, for a malfunction of people's concept of love as the construct of our collective consciousness. And that's what I think is nefarious about the whole thing, because this is Francois de la Rochefoucauld, who is just a self-loving circle jerker. Ultimately, it's a bad model. It's a really bad model. And I can talk about it metaphorically 1,000 different ways. I could say that this flaw in the Enneagram is the flaw that was in the crown of Lucifer. He had a crack in the gems of his in his corona. He had a flawed gem in the corona. I think
that sounds like the black cornea.
Right. So yeah, I think that there's a kind of like we were talking about, that these alchemists, they put a bad recipe forward so
100%.
that people will get fucked if they test it out. And so my theory is that the lovers needs to be in the 3 position and the Empress card needs to be over in the 6 position. But that's a whole show for another day.
And check this out. It kind of reminds me of the homunculus from Descartes, where he's right. Well, this is a woman, but this guy's like, this guy's just sleeping away. Was he holding fire?
This is Athena's birth, where she's born out of Zeus's head, and Hephaestus has to split his dome so Athena can be born.
Really? Let me see here.
Yes. When
Pallas was born and Sol was in conjunction with Venus, it rained gold. Of course, yeah, it's alchemical. Gold at Rhodes. Right, it's like trying to decipher any alchemical thing. It's like, oh wait, it's encoded 100%. So yeah, this dude's like trying to chop out a homunculus or a femunculus, a woman.
That's the acts of enlightenment. So it's not meant to harm you. It's actually meant to help you. So hitting him on top of the head opens your mind and allows all of these ideas to sort of flow in and out of it where they weren't before.
Taking the term opening your mind to a whole new level. Thank you for that, Thomas. I appreciate it, brother. Don't go chopping your heads open with the
but we should all be going out. I think if we learn anything, go and find some scopolamine and just go hard in the paint. And that's what Descartes did. And if you want to be as smart as Descartes, you'll do it too.
If you want to be as smart as Descartes, you're going to go to the juanjuanpodcast.com and buy an Occultus Mundi and get a copy of that's the secret to the Philosopher's Stone. Getting a copy of the Chosen Juan and reading it upside down and learning how to recite it backwards, and you're actually going to discover how to transcend this dimension. So check it out.
You actually need the special Abraxas version.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah,
dude, you don't even have your own copy of it.
That's right. Yeah, my homunculus.
This right here tells you exactly how to orient it so that you have access to the third heaven.
That's right. So yeah, I don't know what we learned from this episode because this was a wild ride, but.
Well, you know what? Before we go, I want to point something out. So I'm going to bring you guys over to my Enneagram. I want to point out that the Cartesian split is knowable on the Enneagram. It's a specific location. It's not willy-nilly. It is a specific location. See if I can put you guys on my mount here. Mount you guys up.
No, I don't want you to mount me, bro.
It feels great to be mounted by you, to be honest.
So in the Enneagram, the 2, the 3, and the 4, this is the heart center. This is where I believe the love needs to actually be over here, and the achiever needs to be over in the 5, 6, and 7 is the thinking grouping. And so this is the heart, this is the thinking, and up top, these 3 are the instincts. They are the body. The 8, the 9, and the 1, they are the body. So when they say Cartesian split, I look at this grand yod, this cut right here that divides the 5 from the 4, and I'm looking at this cut right here, the 7 from the 8, and I'm looking at this cut, the 1 to the 2. The whole thing makes the shape of a Y, and this is the answer: why we are the way we are.
I think, therefore I am.
That's what's up. So yeah, I'm quite sure that these philosophers knew about this system. And I think that we should not take it on face value right away. I feel like, not only was Crowley a classic inverter of things, I think Machiavelli was an inverter of things as well. So whatever these systems we stumble upon, we should always have a space in our mind to separate out, to parse out the possibility that there's a dodge or a duck. So I just thought I would throw that in the mix, because your guys' project has actually kept me on my toes to not take things at face value. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I promise you, we didn't intend for that to happen. We just want to put together really good. I'm just kidding. We open up these cans. I sent it to a friend of mine. He's like, "Yeah, you've opened up a can of worms." I'm like, "We know. This is what we're here for." So the next episode I want to do for the Occult Book Club is going to be Aeon. We're going to have plenty of time. We actually have to reschedule that date that I sent you, Thomas. So we'll talk about that. We'll have time to read in, take a few notes, and read through the whole thing. So yeah, you guys, I'll post your links in the description. Hopefully everybody enjoyed this, and catch you guys on the next wild ride of trying to decipher this weird cacao-esque reality that we live in. And yeah, catch you guys on the other side. Bye.
We'll be right back.